Hello again, friends, and welcome to Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips, joined by Gamecock legend Kip Bouknight to talk Gamecock baseball. Kip, the Gamecocks headed to Hoover to begin play in the SEC Tournament on Tuesday. South Carolina will face Vanderbilt in what is essentially a play-in game in the SEC Tournament, single elimination game. The loser of this game will be out of the conference tournament. And, Kip, the Gamecocks have got to have some wins after dropping 2 out of 3 to Georgia over the weekend. South Carolina has now lost 8 consecutive SEC series. In fact, they only played 10 all year, Kip. They won the first 2 against Tennessee and Alabama, and they lost every conference series since. It's interesting, Kip, that only 2 teams failed to qualify for the SEC Tournament under the format that's currently used. And the 2 teams that did not qualify this year are the 2 teams that the Gamecocks won series against earlier this year, Tennessee and Alabama.
Yeah, it is kind of funny how that ended up working out. But, you know, if you're Chad Holbrook and the staff and even the players, some of the senior leaders hopefully are going to remind the players to somehow, hey, we just got to find a little bit of a winning streak here and get hot at the right time. We still have a chance to make the tournament. And, you know, the good news is they've won a game each weekend of the last 8 straight. Yes, they've lost 8 straight series, but they have at least won 1 game. So they've got to take it 1 game at a time. They've got to be able to, in their mind, think, hey, we have beat some of the best teams in the country, and we've just got to go out and play really well tomorrow against Vandy. And I think this team's a spark away from somehow getting that getting into a right mental state, of being able to somehow get hot. And if this team gets hot, makes it to the tournament, it would certainly not be a team you'd want to face come NCAA tournament time. So I think that they can somehow figure out a way to make it and get hot and win 4 or 5 games in a row. I think it could be a team you wouldn't want to face in the postseason. South
Carolina and Vanderbilt will play the first game of the SEC Tournament Tuesday morning. We've got a morning start Tuesday in Hoover, Alabama. It'll be 10:30 Eastern Time. First pitch between the Gamecocks and the Commodores. That's 9:30 local time in Hoover, but 10:30 Eastern Time Tuesday for the Gamecocks and the Commodores. South Carolina's 32-23 overall, 13-17 in the league. The Gamecocks have got the number 11 seed in the SEC Tournament. 12 teams make the field, obviously, and Vanderbilt comes in 33-21-1. And the Commodores are 15-13-1. Certainly worth pointing out that the Gamecocks and Commodores have played for 5 of the last 7 college baseball national championships, 5 times in the last 7 years. One of these 2 teams has been in the College World Series Finals. So 2 teams with tremendous pedigrees, but kind of having somewhat disappointing years this year, Kip. It looks like Vandy's probably going to make the tournament. They might even lose to the Gamecocks, and they're still probably going to get in. But we know the Gamecocks have still got work to do, Kip. Carolina's not been swept all year. That's one upside that folks are pointing to. You know, Carolina's taken at least 1 game off of everybody they played this year, and there have been some very good teams, and the Gamecocks have played the toughest schedule in the country. That's another good point that the Gamecocks have got working for them. But, Kip, what exactly do you think the Gamecocks need to do? Is there a specific number of games that Carolina's got to win to make the tournament?
I think if they win 4, they're in. I think if they win 3, they will at least be in the conversation. And then I think there are a lot of things that have to play in their favor. You know, some of the lower, maybe lower quality conferences in the country, if you will, they can't have a surprise team win the tournament and then a team that probably was favored to win that's going to get in anyway with an at-large bid not win their conference tournament. So they, you know, I think at this point they certainly know that they need to be the ones to control their own destiny. And if I'm a player for the Gamecocks, there's nothing more than what, you know, winning an SEC championship and celebrating a guarantee to go to the NCAA tournament certainly would be my goal if I'm on that team. And but the best thing they can do is just take it 1 game at a time. This team certainly does not need to have an attitude of looking ahead. They certainly need to go out and just be, well prepared and mentally ready to go and take it 1 pitch and, 1 pitch at a time and do everything they can to win the first game tomorrow morning.
South Carolina joined the SEC in 1992, Kip. The Gamecocks have made 24 appearances in the SEC tournament in Hoover, and their all-time record there is 24-39. And the Gamecocks have not won a single game in Hoover since 2012. Carolina did win the SEC Tournament all the way back in 2004, won it as a number 5 seed that year, but that's really the only really good year the Gamecocks have had in Hoover. Kip, can you offer any explanation at all for why the Gamecocks have struggled in Hoover over the years?
That's a tough one. I do think, as watching this year, I think some struggles we've had has been a little bit of the use of our guys out of the bullpen and only having, really 5 or 6 main guys you use. I do think that has hurt South Carolina. Even when I played back in, 1980, 2001, I think that that was certainly something that made things difficult. When you're asking a guy to come in a game and pitch, when you've got to play sometimes 4 or 5 games in a row, it can be difficult, especially if they're not getting constant work. And constant work is, not pitching for a month and then coming in and having to, get guys out for an inning or two. And that I think has hurt South Carolina to a certain extent. It's hard to put my hands on any one thing, though. I think it's a combination of things. I think it hurts that, this team for a long time, really, in my opinion, has struggled to get bunts down. And not just this year. It's been for whatever reason, there's been a lot of times it's been really, really difficult for guys to get bunts down. And when you're playing in a bigger ballpark, things, the bats have changed over the years. The balls have changed. It's not really a hitter's friendly ballpark anyway, Birmingham. Having said that, they've got to play small ball. They got to read balls in the dirt better. They got to advance on balls in the dirt. They might have to get some hit run going, and they got to pitch real well. And they just for whatever reason, South Carolina is struggling.
Gamecock baseball SEC Tournament preview today on Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips with Gamecock legend Kip Bouknight. Kip won the Golden Spikes Award back in 2000, and he joins us each week here on GCR to talk Gamecock baseball. We invite you to download the Gamecock Central Radio app on the App Store and on Google Play. Subscribe to our podcast. Just search for Gamecock Central Radio on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Kip, the Gamecocks and Commodores met in Columbia in early April. Vanderbilt won 2 of 3 that weekend. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. It was Masters weekend, so they didn't play on Sunday. And Vandy won the first 2 games of the series. Carolina trailed 7-2 in Game 1, scored 4 runs in the 8th inning to cut it to 7-6. Got a big 3-run home run from L.T. Tolbert in Game 1 of that series. And then Carolina got the leadoff runner aboard in the 9th with the score 7-6. But then Vandy reliever Reed Hayes came in and retired 3 Gamecocks in a row to end the ball game, and Vandy won Game 1 in Columbia 7-6. And then the next day, Vanderbilt again beat the Gamecocks in 13 innings. Carolina blew a 3-0 lead in this ball game. Vandy scored the tying run with 2 outs in the top of the 9th inning, and they actually got a 2-out single off the bat of Reed Hayes, the reliever that had closed out the first game of the series. He came to bat, tied the game with a pinch hit single to left field to force extra innings. And in the top of the 13th, with the score tied at 3, Vandy first baseman Julian Infante launched a 2-run home run to left field, and the Commodores beat the Gamecocks 5-3 in Game 2. The Gamecocks would rebound to win Game 3. So, some tight games in this series between the two clubs earlier this year, Kip. But Vandy's a very strong program. They're a good offensive team. They got several very quality hitters. Vandy pitching is always good. Vandy came to Columbia and took 2 out of 3 from the Gamecocks. But that series was, that was 7 weeks ago, Kip. So the Gamecocks have got to find a way to get better as they head to Hoover here, because the Gamecocks are really in a must-win situation. We've been talking about this for several weeks, but, the chips are finally down now, Kip, and 1 loss to Vanderbilt on Tuesday, and the season is over for South Carolina.
Yeah, unfortunately, this team has their back to the walls, and we've been wanting them and hoping and everything you can imagine to try to hope that they can get over the hump, if you will, and start winning some series. But unfortunately, it just hadn't worked out in that scenario, and it is. It's win or go home at this point. And like I said, I think it takes at least 3 wins in a row for us to be even in the conversation. So I think 4 doesn't assure them getting in, but I think our chances are really, really good to get in with 4. But they can't be thinking about that. They've got to think about and focus on going out and being prepared and being ready to play tomorrow morning, and hopefully they can win that game and move on to the next one. They've got to think at one pitch and one game at a time.
The SEC Tournament starts on Tuesday. It will run through Sunday. Sunday's championship game will be televised on ESPN2, 3 o'clock first pitch there. All of the other games will be carried by the SEC Network. So let me give you the scheduled first-round games, single elimination games, starting on Tuesday. Gamecocks and Commodores, first game of the tournament at 10:30 a.m. Tuesday. Then at 2 o'clock, it'll be number 7 seed Texas A&M against number 10 seed Missouri. 5:30 start for the 8-9 game between Auburn and Ole Miss. And then a 9 p.m. start Eastern time for the 5-12 game between Mississippi State and Georgia. So the South Carolina Vanderbilt winner will get Kentucky Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. It'll be another morning game. If the Gamecocks can beat Vanderbilt, they'll play in the morning again on Wednesday against this Kentucky team that's had a very good year, Kip. They're probably the surprise of the SEC. This year they finished with the number 3 seed. Florida has the number 1 seed. LSU is number 2. Kentucky's 3, and Arkansas is 4. So those 4 teams got a bye into Wednesday. They'll not play until Wednesday to start playing the SEC tournament. So, you know, the league is always good, Kip. The Gamecocks have not had a history of success in Hoover, but a lot of the players on this year's team don't know a lot about that. You know, you think about Carlos Cortez, a freshman who's had a fantastic year for the Gamecocks. All the Gamecocks' problems in Hoover in years past have nothing to do with him, so he's probably not too concerned about that, if he's even aware of it at all.
Yeah, you're right, and I think that certainly bodes well. And, you know, it's obviously not something Coach Holbrook's going to talk about. I mean, it's pretty much it's been that way for a long, long time, unfortunately. South Carolina just has never played well in Hoover. So, yeah, again, I think at some point in time, there's going to have to be that guy that just takes over a game. We need a Michael Roth-type performance like we saw in Omaha against Clemson. You know, we need somebody to go out and throw a gem. We need somebody, you know, we need something emotional to happen. You know, a big home run late in the game in the 7th or 8th that Tyler Johnson comes in and gets the last 3 outs for a big win. We need something to spark this team. We need it in a bad way, and hopefully that's going to happen tomorrow morning in Hoover, Alabama.
Kip, Reed Scott will get the start for the Gamecocks. You know, he's been coming out of the bullpen all year. What do you think about Reed Scott as the Gamecock starter?
Well, he's had moments of brilliance. I mean, I think he's certainly a guy that can go out and, you know, pitch well for some innings. I mean, I think we could look up in the 5th and him only maybe giving up a run or 2, and that would be a quality start, in my opinion. And what we're asking for Reed Scott. You know, I'm a little surprised Will Crow's not throwing. I'm hoping he's not too tender. I know he threw well over 100 pitches, but he's going to be throwing every 5th day once he gets to the next level. But again, I'm sure it's probably just a combination of the fact that it's not normal rest for him. In college, you know, guys are normally used to get 6 days rest, pitching every 7th day, and professionally you're pitching. If you start on a Thursday like Will Crow did, he would come back and start again on a Tuesday. So, but again, having said that, his body's not used to that. He's not trained for that, and he's not ready for that yet. So I'm sure that was certainly part of Chad Holbrook, Jerry Meyer's decision.
Will Crow pitched the Thursday night game last week, the series opener against Georgia. Pitched pretty well. He took the loss, but you know, had a couple seeing eye balls that hurt him, and Georgia had a 4-run second inning off of Will Crow in what some folks are saying could be Crow's final appearance at Founders Park. You know, he may go pro at the end of this year. I think there's a good chance that's going to happen. But after the game, Kip, he had said, Will Crow himself said that he was going to prepare as if he were going to be the starting pitcher in the SEC tournament. But it will be Reed Scott that gets the start.
Yeah, I mean, again, and obviously if Reed Scott can go out and pitch well, I mean, you know, it sure would be nice to see him throw about 85 pitches in 7 innings and give up 1 run, and South Carolina have 6 runs, and you're able to next go with, you know, maybe a Park. I'd love to see a Park come in for the 8th and the 9th. If you're winning 6-1, you know, you bring in maybe Park finishes it, or you know, maybe you bring in another guy, not the Tyler Johnson, not the you know, Josh Reagan. Be able to save those guys for the next day. And I know they got to play 1 game at a time, and they got to win that, but there's guys that are good enough, and if they're in that scenario, to be able to pitch. And sure would be nice to see Will Crow be able to get another start in a Gamecock uniform.
Yes, it would. Gamecocks better bring their lunch pails to Hoover. They got work to do. They're 13-17 in the league, And right now, a lot of folks believe South Carolina is on the outside looking in at the NCAA tournament. So, Kip, we'll come back after the tournament. We'll talk about the Gamecock season. We're going to talk about Chad Holbrook and the Gamecock staff. Final note for today's show, in the last 20 years, only twice has Gamecock baseball finished with a losing record in SEC play, and both times have been under Holbrook, barring a deep SEC tournament run. 2015, 2 years ago, the Gamecocks had a losing record in the SEC, and unless they make that deep run in the conference tournament this year, they're going to finish under 500 in the league for just the second time in 20 years. So we got a lot to talk about next week, Kip. Looking forward to doing it with you again. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Emerson. Go Gamecock.
That's Kip Bouknight, Gamecock Great, and I'm Emerson Phillips, and this is Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for joining us for the SEC Baseball Tournament Preview.